I wore a revealing dress to the party for once, and when I arrived home, my husband had prepared this. It's killing me deep down each time I think about the fact that my childish and irresponsible lifestyle I once polished as being free-spirited was the one-way ticket that brought me to the hell I'm stuck in right now. Sometimes I find myself lying on my bed and staring at the ceiling, and most times I was looking at my phone all day, waiting for his call. Just one phone call that I have been praying for and anticipating for about 3 months now. Today, while I laid sprawled on my bed like every passing day, I was going through my Instagram feeds when I came across a fashion reel. The outfits in the video were so luxurious and stunning, but there was a particular one that caught my attention and had me staring for a while, and that reopened old wounds. I didn't even realize when tears streamed down my eyes. I thought I had moved on already, but I guess I was wrong. I still miss him so much, and I deeply regret the fact that I had acted out on my own, and I got tangled in a mess that ended up putting an end to my present and future. My name is Samantha, and I'm 29 years old. I met my husband, let's call him Chris, 4 years ago during a brand launching event in which he was present as one of the biggest sponsors. It started out as a fling and small crush, but I got pregnant after our first time together. Chris, being a highly religious person, was strongly against me getting rid of the baby, and he proposed we should get married, and I agreed. I love everything about Chris except for the fact that he is too conservative and can be uptight sometimes. I am a free-spirited person, and I am not really religious, but I'm not biased either. I was able to adjust to his life because I loved him, but I still missed my old life. I could no longer wear dresses that I so much desired, and I couldn't go to parties and clubs like before, which made me miss my single life so much. Not like my marriage life was bad, I was blessed with a loving husband and a beautiful daughter. Chris is a perfectionist, and he liked everything to be in order, starting from his work to his home. He cared so much about his reputation and didn't want anything to ruin that. So I tried my best to be a perfect wife to him and the best mother to our child. He made sure I was never lacking anything and our child had everything she needed. I was satisfied with my life until one day all hell broke loose and I ended up doing something I should never have done. Having the thought alone was so wrong, and I had to pay a big price for it. It happened about 3 months ago. I had just picked up my daughter from school and had stopped by a mall to do a little shopping, and that's where I bumped into Anna. I had barely recognized her because she looked so different from the way I remembered her. I used to be a model for a famous agency, and Anna was a new model then and was still under training. She was never on my level when it came to beauty, charisma, and a sweet personality. I basically had everything, which made a lot of people envy me, but looking at Anna back there at the mall, I felt the situation between us had become the other way round. She looked so beautiful. Her appearance, her outfit, and all the luxuries she had on were so alluring that I couldn't take my eyes off her. She went on by leaving compliments on how different I looked compared to how I looked 4 years back. She even said I looked more like a housewife than a model, which is definitely a good spot for me, and it did suit me well. I was offended by her tone and words, but I held back because of my husband. I wouldn't want to start a fight and go viral on the internet given the fact that Chris would be so displeased about it, so I just forced a smile and left with my daughter. When I got home, I left my child under the care of her babysitter and spent the remaining hours of the day surfing Anna's social media account. I could perceive a stench of jealousy emitting through me as my mind kept telling me that that would have been me if only I had not gotten pregnant and ended up getting married. Now I am a housewife and I do nothing but take care of my child and my husband. I was fine with it, but after my meeting with Anna, I started seeing myself in a very different way. I used to be fine with having dinner with my husband at home, but then I started having the urge to eat out because I didn't want to eat with him anymore. I was angry at him, although I didn't tell him because I started feeling like he took my dreams away from me. If he didn't get me pregnant, who knows where I would have been by now. And also because I needed to reconnect with that glamorous part of myself, and I wanted to regain the control and freedom that I had once had. Eating out was my way of reliving the moments I couldn't prioritize while being pregnant and eventually becoming a mom. So for me, it was the experience of being out, feeling social, and reconnecting with who I was before everything changed. From eating out, I started using my daughter as an excuse to attend small parties and brand opening events. Most times when I went out, I would take off my wedding ring and enjoy myself playing the role of a spinster, and when I was done, I would put the ring back on and take up my role as a wife and mother when I got home. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, as my husband was completely clueless about what I had been up to. Little did I know that what I felt was right would be the start of my downfall. I was completely blinded that I had no idea I was slowly drifting away from my life as a wife and a mother. My little hide-and-seek found its freedom when Chris left the country for a business trip. Not like I didn't want to tell him. I wanted to be strongly recognized first and be fully back into it before I told him. Hopefully, by that time it would be too late for him to do anything to change my mind or take my life away from me again. And it was during that time that I met Philip. We met at one of the brand opening events where we were both chosen to play a role as a couple for a newly released outfit, which was one of the marketing strategies. Given my past experience as a model, it wasn't so hard to pull it off, although I wanted to refuse at first, but the moment my eyes laid on the dress, I could feel myself being drawn to it, and I couldn't refuse the offer. I put the dress on, and in a few minutes the shoot started. We were asked to strike a lot of poses, and it went from cool to awkward, and then started getting sultry. I knew this was going to happen, and I was an idiot to accept it, and even when it started getting complicated, I was still enjoying it. During the shoot, Philip's fingers ran over my body like a professional, as if he was skilled with his hands. Though it's stupid to admit it, it did have an effect on me. My breathing became shallow as I tried so hard to fight the emotions that were surging inside me. I kept telling myself it was clearly wrong, and as a married woman, I shouldn't be doing this, but I couldn't stop myself, and my body just wouldn't yield to my mind. He then had his arms around my shoulder, and then he wrapped them around me, slightly resting on my breast. The moment Philip's hands slightly brushed on my breast, my body suddenly got heated and my cheeks got flushed. I wanted to pull away from him, but then his voice came from behind me and he whispered into my ear saying that he felt honored to be doing a shoot with a star like me. Those words made my heart race. I couldn't recall the last time someone complimented me or held me with such high esteem, and just like that I felt relaxed and gave into lust. His hands then slowly trailed down to my waist, pulling me closer to his body. I could feel the unsteady rhythm of his heartbeat. It was clear I wasn't the only one affected by his touch. My body also had some effect on him, so we both felt the same way. After the photo shoot, we had joined the whole team for a group party, and that was where I messed up. I had noticed throughout the whole time that Philip had his eyes on me, and I would shamefully find myself tucking my hair behind my ear and adjusting the way I sat and my clothes. I was even mindful of the way I was eating my food. It was so weird how a strange guy I had just met could affect me so deeply, especially when my husband had never made me feel so insecure. We had a blast that night, and I was so focused on Philip that I had forgotten I was a light drinker and ended up drinking too much. I got so drunk and felt dizzy, so I staggered to the restroom, and by the time I got out, Philip was waiting outside for me. He gave me a sweet, manly smile, and I completely lost my mind. I don't know how, but my legs kept wobbling towards him, and the next thing that happened was that we were kissing each other. I can't explain the sensual outburst I felt that night because I thought I was going to go crazy. I was so hungrily devouring every part of Philip's body that I didn't have any clue how he was able to move us to the room upstairs. I didn't even give him a chance to shut the door behind us. I just started taking my clothes off. I was aroused, and coupled with the fact that I was drunk, I wasn't thinking straight anymore. Philip caressed me and fondled every part of my body, and just like that, we slept together. It was an experience I had never felt even when my husband made love to me. Could this be the reason why ladies preferred younger men? This guy was clearly bringing out a side of me that I'd never thought I had, and just like that I kept begging him for more and had completely forgotten I had a family and a 4-year-old daughter waiting for me to come home. I woke up the next morning only to realize how big of a line I had crossed. Philip had left a note in the room with his phone number, and it struck me that my daughter was all alone at home. I quickly hurried home, and I was lucky her babysitter had spent the night with her. I couldn't believe how careless and irresponsible I was that night, but I swept it under the rug and convinced myself it was a one-time mistake, and I made a promise that was never going to happen again. I broke that promise as quickly as I had made it. Philip's path crossed with mine again a few days later, and we started meeting more often. And just like that, we kept sleeping together. I felt guilty about what I was doing, but I just couldn't stop. The more I messed up, the less guilty I felt, and it made me feel bolder. I was no longer bothered about Chris, as I was so confident I had my tracks covered and he was never going to find out until I was ready to tell him. That's if I was even planning to still go ahead with telling him. I had my daughter stay with my mom just so I could have all my free time without being bothered about anything, and just like that, I had resumed my modeling career, even though I was sure Chris was going to lose it if he found out. A month went by and Chris came home. I had brought our daughter home and made sure everything was in order before his arrival. I had magically returned to the saint he believed I was and a perfect wife just the way he wanted it. Chris showed me just the same sweet love and affection, which made me feel guilty. A big project came up and the brand had reached out to me to be their model. I rejected it due to the fact that Chris was around and I couldn't risk getting caught since I was yet to tell him about it. But after hearing that the offer was going to be given to Anna since I didn't want it, my pride got poked on. So I jumped in on the offer, assuring myself I was going to find a way out with Chris around. The outfit given to me was so sultry and revealing, and I was to wear it to a party to showcase the new design. I had never appeared that way in a big party before, and it was going to be filled with influential people. It was definitely a big opportunity for any model, as it was a gateway to becoming powerful and influential. Without thinking about it, I discreetly checked Chris's schedule, and I was lucky he was going to be busy that day and he would probably come back very late, and before then, I would be back home. Looking back at how happy I was that day, I feel like a big loser, and I don't deserve a chance at forgiveness. So when Chris left that day, I asked the babysitter over, and while I made plans to go for the party, I told her I was going to be back soon, and that was the plan. I was only to go there, showcases the outfit as expected, flaunt my beauty and talent, and before you know, I'm back home. At least before Chris comes back. It was time for me to showcase and prove that I was still the best when it came to fashion and modeling. I had my makeup done and shamelessly got myself into such a dress. Everything about me was so revealing, but I had dumped my conscience along with my wedding ring at home before appearing in a big hall filled with thousands of influential and powerful figures. I strode my way in, elegantly, and all eyes and cameras were all on me. At that moment, I was so powerful, and I even felt my confidence kicking in. It felt like the good old days, except it was more. I had a feeling that I haven't felt in a while, and it was as if I was in a completely different world. I could see the jealousy on Anna's face, and I was so proud. And for the first time in many years, I could actually be myself. The party was fun, I was enjoying it, and I felt free and pretty. When everything was done and the party was over, I returned home happily, only to be confronted with a cold reality. What awaited me was the most distressing situation I could ever imagine. Chris was holding a bag in his hand and was locking the door when I arrived. I was also met with the sight of my bags and everything I owned stacked by the entrance. He had prepared to throw me out. I was confused at what was happening, but I was more scared because of dress I was in. I didn't expect him to come back this early, and I was trying to understand what was happening. Clearly he was furious, and his eyes ran through my body from head to toes with horror in them as he looked at me with so much distaste. I was trembling so much that I couldn't focus on anything. I get that he was clearly angry about my dressing, but that was not enough to throw me out. Besides, how did he know how I was dressed for him to prepare this, because he left the house before me so he wouldn't have known? I asked myself that question, but that was not the most important at the moment. The important thing was asking for an apology, so considering his reaction, I told him I was sorry, and then I asked why my things were all outside. And he replied to me with a question, which was why my wedding ring was not on my finger. I remembered then that I had left the ring at home, and maybe he found it and there was no explanation I could give to justify my actions. But still, I tried explaining myself, and he told me I should save myself the stress so I could have enough energy to pray. Those words coming out from his mouth threw me into a state of confusion, as I couldn't understand what he meant by that. He started yelling at me, and telling how inconsiderate I was, and that I should be ashamed of myself. He was so bitter and full of rage that he kept shouting, and this made me feel so terrible. He finally dropped a bomb by asking what I was doing when my daughter was in the operating room fighting for her life. Those words almost sucked my blood dry as I froze on the spot. He told me he had received a call from the babysitter. She had been calling me, but I didn't respond, so she had to call him. Our daughter had been rushed to the hospital as she fell down the stairs. He added that he had checked the CCTV footage to confirm the babysitter's words, and that our daughter had woken up looking for her mother, and she fell while trying to go down the stairs. He added by telling me that I should pray so hard that nothing bad happens to our child, or it won't end well with me. He threw a package at me and said he had bought me all the clothes I loved so much when he was returning from the hospital to come get his stuff so he can stay over there with our daughter. And he stated that that was the very clothes that had made me neglect my family, so I should take it, together with my things, and leave his house. I started begging him as tears flowed from my eyes. I begged him, trying to explain that I only wanted to continue my job as a model, but he interrupted me by saying if working as a model also included me dressing almost naked, despite the fact that I'm married, and if it also involved sleeping around, he wanted nothing to do with me. My heart dropped to my stomach when I heard his last words. He pulled out pictures of me and Philip together from the night we made out. He told me I was such an idiot to think I could escape with all the madness I pulled in his absence. He added that if I wanted to model so badly that I should have discussed it with him like married couples would do, and if he was still so against it, that we would have found a way around it. He went on to reveal that the very same man I was sleeping with actually planned with Anna to ruin me. Anna had ordered him to take photos of me so she could use them as leverage against me, but Philip had taken the humiliating photos and sent them to him, blackmailing him and demanding money from him. That crippled my leg and I fell to the ground. I couldn't believe how much shame I had brought to myself and my family. Chris asked me to leave and he never wanted to see my face. He ordered that I should leave his house and wait until he decided what he was going to do with me. I have been waiting at my mom's place for about 3 months now, but still no news from Chris. I had been banned from visiting my daughter in the hospital as Chris clearly ordered the doctors to never let me in. I'm still speechless with the way things panned out for me. Looking back, I just can't see anything beneficial I got that had made me put my marriage and family on the line. I cannot forgive myself, and all I can do is wait and pray that Chris calls me. And though it's selfish of me, but I'm also hoping we could patch things up and rebuild our marriage. I really love my husband. I admit I made a mistake, but hurting my husband and even getting my daughter involved was never my intention. I don't know what else to do anymore. I am about to lose it. Update. It's true when people say life is so unpredictable and nobody could tell what was going to happen even in the next hour, coming days or years to come. Just like my marriage, I had never thought I would lose my husband, and in the most embarrassing way ever. How do I turn back time so I could go back and correct all the mistakes I made? How do I right all the wrong I did? My life is already over and I have no excuses to justify my decisions and every action I have taken. I've prayed so hard for months for a miracle to happen, but still, none. So I'm just here to pour out my heart for one last time. I needed to vent. I am emotionally frustrated and drained. Chris had finally called me. It felt like a dream come true, but still my hopes were crushed. He called and asked me to meet him in the hospital, and that our daughter had woken up. I hurried over like a madwoman, but I still couldn't make it past the entrance. And after begging for about 20 minutes, Chris finally came out with our family lawyer, and the next thing I received were divorce papers that Chris shoved to my face. As if divorcing me wasn't enough, he had filed for custody of our child, along with a restraining order that clearly stated I was never allowed to go near him or our daughter ever in this lifetime. He said I was a danger to her. I was so shocked by the decision Chris had made, and that was the complete opposite of the thoughts I had when I rushed down to the hospital. I had hoped things would go well, but I had no idea on how to understand or accept what was going on. I knelt down and cried and begged, but no matter how pathetic I looked, it only made Chris furious as he kept growling that I should sign the divorce papers. I had tried to fight back, saying I was never going to sign it, and I wasn't going to let him take my daughter away from me. He then told me that if that was going to be my decision, he was going to take the case to court and show the court pictures of my infidelity, which will ruin my reputation and the career I so much wanted that I abandoned my family for, and he will testify about all the things I did with the claim that I am not fit to raise his child, given the kind of person I was. The thought of going through all that was already horrible, that even though it did not happen, I could already see the outcome, and I definitely had a lot to lose. I broke down into tears as I could not find any words to say anymore. My whole body just kept shaking, and all I could do was cry. I could see the determination in Chris's eyes. He wasn't bluffing. He was really going to make sure he cut me totally out of his life and our daughter's life. Is this what revenge feels like? I would rather he curse at me, ignore me, or even divorce me, but I just couldn't accept the fact that he detested me so much that he wanted to completely put a full stop to everything. Didn't our time together mean anything to him? I don't know if I have any right to ask him that, because I was clearly able to do all I did without batting an eye. So I understand that Chris had every right to punish me, but this is just too much, too cruel. This is like shutting me in a vacuum with no oxygen to breathe, as my life right now is so suffocating. I lost everything. My marriage and my family. Where did it all go wrong? How on earth am I going to survive this? I kept asking myself all these as I signed on the divorce papers and watched his lawyer leave with them. Chris then told me he had gotten Philip arrested, and Anna has also been charged. He assured me that he was going to make sure all the disgusting pictures Philip had taken of me were gone, as long as I kept to the agreement, and vanished from his world completely. He concluded by saying that he was doing that as the last deed of kindness towards me for old time's sake, and that he wouldn't take it easy with me if I stepped on him ever again, and just like that, I was dragged out of the hospital. I kept pleading he should please let me see my daughter one last time, but all my pleading fell on deaf ears. Chris wouldn't budge, and just like that, I was thrown out of the hospital, and I returned to my old hole. A hole I have been hiding in for the past months, and I had been trying my best to accept my situation. I really can't blame Chris. It's all my fault, I guess, and I'm going to spend the remaining days I have left paying for what I did to myself and my family. I don't know if I deserved all of these, but I do know that I can't change the past, and I hope for a better future. But maybe, just maybe, every ending is a new beginning. Thanks for reading.